Section 15 of The Dream of the Red Chamber, Book 1. This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information or to volunteer, please visit LibriVox.org. The Dream of the Red Chamber, Book 1 by Cao Xueqin. Translated by Henry Bancroft Jolly. Chapter 6, Part 2. Chou Jui's wife thereupon went out and led them in. When they ascended the steps of the main apartment, a young waiting maid raised a woolen portière, and as soon as they entered the hall, they smelt a whiff of perfume as it came wafted into their faces. What the scent was they could not discriminate, but their persons felt as if they were among the clouds. The articles of furniture and ornaments in the whole room were so brilliant to the sight, and so vying in splendour, that they made the head swim and the eyes to blink, and old goody Liu did nothing else the while than nod her head, smack her lips, and invoke Buddha. Forthwith she was led to the eastern side into the suite of apartments, where was the bedroom of Chia Lien's eldest daughter, P'ing Erh, who was standing by the edge of the stove couch, casting a couple of glances at old goody Liu, and felt constrained to inquire how she was, and to press her to have a seat. Goody Liu, noticing that P'ing Erh was entirely robed in silks, and that she had gold pins fixed in her hair, and silver ornaments in her coiffure, and that her countenance resembled a flower, or the moon, in beauty, readily imagined her to be lady Feng, and was about to address her as my lady; but when she heard Mrs. Chou speak to her as Miss P'ing, and P'ing Erh promptly addressed Chou Jui's wife as Mrs. Chou, she eventually became aware that she could be no more than a waiting maid of a certain respectability. She at once pressed old goody Liu and P'ing Erh to take a seat on the stove couch. P'ing Erh and Chou Jui's wife sat face to face on the edges of the couch. The waiting maids brought in tea. After they had partaken of it, old goody Liu could hear nothing but a lo tang noise, resembling very much the sound of a bolting frame winnowing flour, and she could not resist looking now to the east, and now to the west. Suddenly in the great hall she espied, suspended on a pillar, a box at the bottom of which hung something like the weight of a balance, which incessantly wagged to and fro. "What can this thing be?" communed goody Liu in her heart. "What can be its use?" While she was aghast, she unexpectedly heard a sound of tang, like the sound of a golden bell or copper cymbal, which gave her quite a start. In a twinkle of the eyes followed 8 or 9 consecutive strokes, and she was bent on inquiring what it was, when she caught sight of several waiting maids enter in a confused crowd. "Our lady has come down," they announced. P'ing Erh, together with Chou Jui's wife, rose with all haste. "Old goody Liu," they urged, "do sit down and wait till it's time, when we'll come and ask you in." Saying this, they went out to meet lady Feng. Old goody Liu, with suppressed voice and ear intent, waited in perfect silence. She heard at a distance the voices of some people laughing, whereupon about 10 or 20 women in rustling clothes and petticoats made their entrance one by one into the hall, and thence into the room on the other quarter. She also detected 2 or 3 women with red lacquered boxes in their hands come over on this part and remain in waiting. "Get the repast ready," she heard some one from the off side say. The servants gradually dispersed and went out, and there only remained in attendance a few of them to bring in the courses. For a long time not so much as the caw of a crow could be heard, when she unexpectedly perceived 2 servants carry in a couch table and lay it on this side of the divan. Upon this table were placed bowls and plates, in proper order replete as usual with fish and meats, but of these only a few kinds were slightly touched. As soon as P'ing Erh perceived all these delicacies, he set up such a noise, and would have some meat to eat, but goody Liu administered to him such a slap that he had to keep away. Suddenly she saw Mrs. Chou appear, full of smiles, and as she waved her hand, she called her. Goody Liu understood her meaning, and at once, pulling P'ing Erh off the couch, she proceeded to the centre of the hall, And after Mrs. Cho had whispered to her again for a while, they came at length with slow step into the room on this side, where they saw on the outside of the door, suspended by brass hooks, a deep red flowered soft portière. Below the window, on the southern side, was a stove couch, and on this couch was spread a crimson carpet. Leaning against the wooden partition wall on the east side stood a chain embroidered back cushion and a reclining pillow. There was also spread a large watered satin sitting cushion with a gold embroidered centre, and on the side stood cuspidors made of silver. Lady Feng, when at home, usually wore on her head a front piece of dark marten à la Chao Chun, surrounded with tassels of strung pearls. She had on a robe of peach red flowered satin, a short pelisse of slate blue stiff silk lined with squirrel, and a jupe of deep red foreign crêpe lined with ermine. Resplendent with pearl powder and with cosmetics, she sat in there, stately and majestic, with a small brass poker in her hands, with which she was stirring the ashes of the hand stove. P'ing Erh stood by the side of the couch, holding a very small lacquered tea tray. In this tray was a small teacup with a cover. Lady Feng neither took any tea, nor did she raise her head, but was intent upon stirring the ashes of the hand stove. "How is it you haven't yet asked her to come in?" she slowly inquired; and as she spake, she turned herself round, and was about to ask for some tea, when she perceived that Mrs. Chou had already introduced the two persons, and that they were standing in front of her. She forthwith pretended to rise, but did not actually get up, and with a face radiant with smiles, she ascertained about their health, after which she went in to chide Chou Jui's wife. "Why didn't you tell me they had come before?" she said. Old goody Liu was already by this time prostrated on the ground, and after making several obeisances, "How are you, my lady?" she inquired. "Dear Mrs. Chou," lady Feng immediately observed, "do pull her up, and don't let her prostrate herself. I'm yet young in years and don't know her much. What's more, I've no idea what's the degree of the relationship between us, and I daren't speak directly to her." "This is the old lady about whom I spoke a short while back," speedily explained Mrs. Chou. Lady Feng nodded her head assentingly. By this time old goody Liu had taken a seat on the edge of the stove couch. As for Pan Erh, he had gone farther and taken refuge behind her back, and though she tried by every means to coax him to come forward and make a bow, he would not, for the life of him, consent. "Relatives though we be," remarked lady Feng, as she smiled, "we haven't seen much of each other, so that our relations have been quite distant. But those who know how matters stand will assert that you all despise us, and won't often come to look us up, while those mean people, who don't know the truth, will imagine that we have no eyes to look at any one." Old goody Liu promptly invoked Buddha. "We are at home in great straits," she pleaded, "and that is why it wasn't easy for us to manage to get away and come. Even supposing we had come as far as this, had we not given your ladyship a slap on the mouth, those gentlemen would also, in point of fact, have looked down upon us as a mean lot." "Why such language as this," exclaimed lady Feng smilingly, "cannot help making one's heart full of displeasure. We simply rely upon the reputation of our grandfather to maintain the status of a penniless official, that's all. Why, in whose household is there anything substantial? We are merely the denuded skeleton of what we were in days of old, and no more. As the proverb has it, the Emperor himself has 3 families of poverty-stricken relatives, and how much more such as you and I?" Having passed these remarks, she inquired of Mrs. Chou, "Have you let madame know, yes or no?" "We are now waiting," replied Mrs. Chou, "for my lady's orders." "Go and have a look," said lady Feng, "but should there be any one there, or should she be busy, then don't make any mention, but wait until she's free. Then you can tell her about it and see what she says." Chou Jui's wife, having expressed her compliance, went off on this errand. During her absence, lady Feng gave orders to some servants to take a few fruits and hand them to Pan Erh to eat, and she was inquiring about one thing and another when there came a large number of married women who had the direction of affairs in the household, to make their several reports. P'ing Erh announced their arrival to lady Feng, who said, "I am now engaged in entertaining some guests, so let them come back again in the evening; but should there be anything pressing, then bring it in and I'll settle it at once." P'ing Erh left the room, but she returned in a short while. "I've asked them," she observed, "but as there's nothing of any urgency, I told them to disperse." Lady Feng nodded her head in token of approval, when she perceived Chou Jui's wife come back. "Our lady," she reported as she addressed lady Feng, "says that she has no leisure to day; that if you, lady Secunda, will entertain them, it will come to the same thing; that she's much obliged for their kind attention in going to the trouble of coming; that if they have come simply on a stroll, then well and good; but that if they have aught to say, they should tell you, lady Secunda, which will be tantamount to their telling her." "I've nothing to say," interposed old goody Liu; "I simply come to see our elder and our younger lady, which is a duty on my part, a relative as I am." "Well, if there's nothing particular that you've got to say, all right," Mrs. Chou forthwith added; "but if you do have anything, don't hesitate telling lady Secunda, and it will be just as if you had told our lady." As she uttered these words, she winked at goody Liu. Goody Liu understood what she meant, but before she could give vent to a word, her face got scarlet, and though she would have liked not to make any mention of the object of her visit, she felt constrained to express her shame and speak out. "Properly speaking," she observed, "this being the first time I see you, my lady, I shouldn't mention what I've to say; but as I come here from far off to seek your assistance, my old friend, I have no help but to mention it." She had barely spoken as much as this when she heard the youths at the inner door cry out, "The young gentleman from the Eastern mansion has come." Lady Feng promptly interrupted her. "Old goody Liu," she remarked, "you needn't add anything more." She at the same time inquired, "Where's your master, Mr. Jung?" when became audible the sound of footsteps moving along the way, and in walked a young man of 17 or 18. His appearance was handsome, his person slender and graceful. He had on light furs, a girdle of value, costly clothes, and a beautiful cap. At this stage, goody Liu did not know whether it was best to sit down or to stand up, neither could she find anywhere to hide herself. "Pray sit down," urged lady Feng with a laugh; "this is my nephew." Old goody Liu then wriggled herself now one way and then another on to the edge of the couch, where she took a seat. "My father," Chia Jung smilingly ventured, "has sent me to ask a favour of you, O aunt. On some previous occasion, our grand aunt gave you, dear aunt, a stove couch glass screen, and as to morrow father has invited some guests of high standing, he wishes to borrow it to lay out for a little show, after which he purposes sending it back again." "You're late by a day," replied lady Feng. "It was only yesterday that I gave it to some one else." Chia Jung, upon hearing this, forthwith, with giggles and smiles, made near the edge of the couch a sort of genuflexion. "Aunt," he went on, "if you don't lend it, father will again say that I don't know how to speak, and I shall get another sound thrashing. You must have pity upon your nephew, aunt." "I've never seen anything like this," observed lady Feng sneeringly. "The things belonging to the Wang family are all good, but where have you put all those things of yours? The only good way is that you shouldn't see anything of ours, for as soon as you catch sight of anything, you at once entertain a wish to carry it off." "Pray, aunt," entreated Chia Jung with a smile, "do show me some compassion." "Mind your skin," lady Feng warned him, "if you do chip or spoil it in the least." She then bade P'ing Erh take the keys of the door of the upstairs room and send for several trustworthy persons to carry it away. Chia Jung was so elevated that his eyebrows dilated and his eyes smiled. "I've brought myself," he added with vehemence, "some men to take it away. I won't let them recklessly bump it about." Saying this, he speedily got up and left the room. Lady Feng suddenly bethought herself of something, and turning towards the window, she called out, "Runger, come back!" Several servants who stood outside caught up her words. "Mr. Jung," they cried, "you're requested to go back." Whereupon Chia Jung turned round and retraced his steps, and with hands drooping respectfully against his sides, he stood ready to listen to his aunt's wishes. Lady Feng was however intent upon gently sipping her tea, and after a good long while of abstraction, she at last smiled. "Never mind," she remarked, "you can go. But come after you've had your evening meal, and then I'll tell you about it. Just now there are visitors here, and besides, I don't feel in the humour." Chia Jung thereupon retired with gentle step. Old goody Liu by this time felt more composed in body and heart. "I've to day brought your nephew," she then explained, "not for anything else, but because his father and mother haven't at home so much as anything to eat. The weather besides is already cold, so that I had no help but to take your nephew along and come to you, old friend, for assistance." As she uttered these words, she again pushed Pan Erh forward. "What did your father at home tell you to say?" she asked of him, "and what did he send us over here to do? Was it only to give our minds to eating fruits?" Lady Feng had long ago understood what she meant to convey, and finding that she had no idea how to express herself in a decent manner, she readily interrupted her with a smile. "You needn't mention anything," she observed. "I am well aware of how things stand." And addressing herself to Mrs. Chou, she inquired, "Has this old lady had breakfast, yes or no?" Old goody Liu hurried to explain. "As soon as it was daylight," she proceeded, "we started with all speed on our way here, and had we even so much as time to have any breakfast?" Lady Feng promptly gave orders to send for something to eat. In a short while, Chou Jui's wife had called for a table of viands for the guests, which was laid in the room on the eastern side, and then came to take goody Liu and Pan Erh over to have their repast. "My dear Mrs. Chou," enjoined lady Feng, "give them all they want, as I can't attend to them myself," which said, they hastily passed over into the room on the eastern side. Lady Feng, having again called Mrs. Chou, asked her, "When you first informed madame about them, what did she say?" "Our lady observed," replied Chou Jui's wife, "that they don't really belong to the same family; that in former years their grandfather was an official at the same place as our old master; that hence it came that they joined ancestors; that these few years there hasn't been much intercourse between their family and ours; that some years back, whenever they came on a visit, they were never permitted to go empty handed; and that as their coming on this occasion to see us is also a kind attention on their part, they shouldn't be slighted. If they've anything to say," our lady continued, "tell lady Secunda to do the necessary, and that will be all right." "Isn't it strange," exclaimed lady Feng, as soon as she had heard the message, "since we are all one family, how is it I am not familiar even with so much as their shadow?" While she was uttering these words, old goody Liu had had her repast and come over, dragging Pan Erh, and licking her lips and smacking her mouth, she expressed her thanks. Lady Feng smiled. "Do pray sit down," she said, "and listen to what I'm going to tell you. What you, old lady, meant a little while back to convey, I'm already as much as yourself well acquainted with. Relatives as we are, we shouldn't in fact have waited until you came to the threshold of our doors, but ought, as is but right, to have attended to your needs. But the thing is that of late the household affairs are exceedingly numerous, and our lady, advanced in years as she is, couldn't at a moment, it may possibly be, bethink herself of you at all. What's more, when I took over charge of the management of the ménage, I myself didn't know of all these family connections. Besides, though to look at us from outside everything has a grand and splendid aspect, people aren't aware that large establishments have such great hardships, which were we to recount to others, they would hardly like to credit as true. But since you've now come from a great distance, and this is the first occasion that you open your mouth to address me, how can I very well allow you to return to your home with empty hands? By a lucky coincidence, Our Lady gave, yesterday, to the waiting maids 20 taels to make clothes with, a sum which they haven't as yet touched, and if you don't despise it as too little, you may take it home as a first instalment, and employ it for your wants." When old goody Liu heard the mention made by lady Feng of their hardships, she imagined that there was no hope; but upon hearing her again speak of giving her 20 taels, she was exceedingly delighted, so much so that her eyebrows dilated and her eyes gleamed with smiles. "We too know," she smilingly remarked, "all about difficulties, but the proverb says, 'A dying camel of leanness is even bigger by much than a horse.' No matter what those distresses may be, were you yet to pluck one single hair from your body, my old friend, it would be stouter than our own waist." Chou Jui's wife stood by, and on hearing her make these coarse utterances, she did all she could to give her a hint by winking and make her desist. Lady Feng laughed and paid no heed, but calling P'ing Erh, she bade her fetch the parcel of money which had been given to them on the previous day, and also to bring a string of cash; and when these had been placed before goody Liu's eyes, "This is," said lady Feng, "silver to the amount of 20 taels, which was for the time given to these young girls to make winter clothes with. But some other day, when you've nothing to do, come again on a stroll, in evidence of the good feeling which should exist between relatives. It's besides already late, and I don't wish to detain you longer, and all for no purpose; but on your return home, present my compliments to all those of yours to whom I should send them." As she spake, she stood up. Old goody Liu gave utterance to 1,010,000 expressions of gratitude, and taking the silver and cash, she followed Chou Jui's wife on her way to the outhouses. "Well, mother dear," inquired Mrs. Chou, "what did you think of my lady, that you couldn't speak, and that whenever you opened your mouth, it was all 'your nephew'? I'll make just one remark, and I don't mind if you do get angry. Had he even been your kindred nephew, you should in fact have been somewhat milder in your language; for that gentleman, Mr. Jung, is her kith and kin nephew, and whence has appeared such another nephew of hers as Pan Erh?" Old goody Liu smiled. "My dear sister in law," she replied, "as I gazed upon her, were my heart and eyes, pray, full of admiration or not? And how then could I speak as I should?" As they were chattering, they reached Chou Jui's house. They had been sitting for a while, when old goody Liu produced a piece of silver, which she was purposing to leave behind to be given to the young servants in Chou Jui's house to purchase fruit to eat. But how could Mrs. Chou satiate her eye with such a small piece of silver? She was determined in her refusal to accept it, so that old goody Liu, after assuring her of her boundless gratitude, took her departure out of the back gate she had come in from. Reader, you do not know what happened after old goody Liu left, but listen to the explanation which will be given in the next chapter. End of section 15.